Okay, something big is about to happen later this month, July of 2026, in gold. And of course, it involves China. So welcome to the special analysis. I'm Mike Adams. Thank you for joining me. And I'm recording this on, July 10th. And as you know, July 4th came and went, and there was a lot of online speculation. And more than speculation, Judy Shelton was talking about this for years, this idea that perhaps U.S. gold would be revalued because it's still on the books at the Treasury at only $42.22 per ounce, when it's actually worth about, $4,000 plus an ounce, or if not more. So there was a lot of speculation that there would be a revaluation which would free up at least $1 trillion or more for the U.S. Treasury to try to pay down, the debt and make the debt to GDP ratio look better so that Treasury yields would go lower and maybe the 10-year would stay below 5%, right? That was the thinking. And the thinking was that this would happen perhaps on July 4th. Well, it did not happen on July 4th, but the idea is still fully valid, and it may yet happen this year. We just don't know the timing of it, and we also don't know what the Treasury may be waiting for. Maybe they're waiting for gold prices to go higher so they can revalue at the market price and get more than $1 trillion of payoff of the U.S. debt. So what would make gold prices go higher? Well, that's what's about to happen, I believe. And again, it involves China. Now, coming on July 24th, and this is not speculation, this is already announced, China's major banks, the Agricultural Bank of China, the China Construction Bank, the Ping An Bank, the ICBC, and a bunch of others, Postal Savings Bank, they are going to halt all retail purchasing of precious metals on margin, meaning effectively they are ending the paper marketplace for gold and silver at the retail level. And the reason they're doing that, and this has already been announced, and they've said that everybody has to liquidate all their positions, close them out, or take physical delivery before July 24th, which is just 2 weeks away at this point, right? So now, notably, this does not affect the big bank commercial marketplace for gold and silver, where there are still ETFs and paper contracts and things like that. But a lot of the volatility in gold and silver was being pursued by the retail side of Chinese citizens, and also this happens in India, this happens in Thailand, this happens in Vietnam, and everywhere, but especially in Asia, where gold is recognized as a real store of value. But there was a lot of speculation on gold, and because of the volatility, as we've seen, gold has been $5,500 an ounce earlier this year, and now it's 4,000 something. This volatility can wipe out a retail investor if they are investing on margin. And so China has decided that they will not allow their everyday retail people to bet on gold and silver and possibly risk being wiped out. Not just wiped out of the amount of money they bet on it, but wiped out by 10x more than they bet, because a lot of people don't understand how options work, and you can lose more than what you put up. Now, this was something that was coming for a long time, and it will impact the entire world, which I'll explain here. But the Shanghai Gold Exchange, or the SGE, had been over the last couple of years slowly raising the margin requirements for betting on gold and silver. And when you raise the margins, it reduces the amount of leverage that retail investors can invoke. So it makes the markets, more conservative and less volatile. So they have raised the margins ultimately to more than 100%. I know. And then, the margins actually hit 140%. So you had to deposit more money than what you were actually trading in gold and silver. So this has ended now with the complete outlawing of leverage positions. as the end game here for retail investors. So the upshot of this is that without these paper markets at retail, then gold and silver cannot be very easily manipulated by retail traders. Now, interestingly, the large bank, the financial and commercial traders that operate in China are, of course, controlled by the Chinese government. And so they are not manipulating the price of gold and silver artificially in the way that the West might want to do. So in other words, what really happens is that American agents who are desperately trying to suppress the price of gold and silver in order to protect the dollar and protect the debt market, the treasuries, they go to China and then they pose as retail investors and they sell the paper markets to artificially suppress the prices of the physical metals. And this is being done, China knows this is being done by U.S. agents or proxies for the West, and they know this is part of a global manipulation of gold and silver. So by shutting this down, the SGE is ending the ability of Western operators to easily manipulate gold and silver prices for the actual physical metal in Asia. And the result of that is going to be almost certainly that actual price discovery will begin to take place following July 24th. And price discovery will show gold and silver as, again, almost certainly, but this is just my best guess, as being higher than what the paper markets show. Because the paper market manipulation is always trying to keep the prices artificially low. So as that paper market is outlawed in China, the retail marketplace will be based on physical delivery of gold and silver, or a one-to-one ratio. If you want to buy gold or sell gold, you actually have to buy or sell the physical gold, and you can't just bet on margin and crush the price with paper. You're going to have to actually deal with physical gold. In fact, in Hong Kong, there is a massive expansion of the settlement system for gold and a storage system for gold, the vaults. So there's an offshore vault in Hong Kong that has been opened by the Shanghai Gold Exchange, and that physical capacity is being expanded to hold more than 2,000 tons within about 3 years. Currently, it's holding less than 200 tons. There's an expansion underway right now to reach 200 tons of metals. And again, that's going to be 2,000 tons by 2029 is the plan. So there's also a courier of gold and silver called SF Holding that operates in Hong Kong. They're opening a 100-ton vault near the Hong Kong airport around October of this year. Why is this happening? Because, of course, they anticipate a massive amount of physical metal coming into Hong Kong, i.e. China, via Hong Kong. Now, why are they anticipating a massive amount of metal coming in? Well, it's not difficult to figure this out. If the paper manipulation is outlawed for the retail markets, and if actual price discovery is allowed to take place, then gold and silver spot prices in Shanghai will, like I said earlier, almost certainly rise to be something higher than what they are in London or New York or COMEX, whatever, the Western markets. As a result of that, then there's going to be, of course, triage. So there will be smart people who will buy physical gold and silver from the United States or London, and they will fly it to Hong Kong. And they will sell it there at the higher spot price by delivering the physical metal, and then they will, of course, pocket the difference as profit. So if the West is manipulating the gold and silver paper markets, which, of course, is definitely happening from the banks, JP Morgan, come on, and the federal government, the Treasury, etc., all involved in heavy metals market manipulation through paper markets. If the price is artificially low, in the United States, then the smart players are going to say, well, they're going to place a contract on the COMEX, and they're going to stand for delivery of those metals at the artificially low manipulated paper price. And then they're going to take physical delivery, until the COMEX defaults, which is exactly where this is headed, at least in my view, that's where this is going. But until then, they're going to take physical delivery, they're going to put it on a plane, fly it to Hong Kong, and pocket, whatever, $10 per ounce profit on silver, maybe $100 an ounce profit on gold. It's just easy money. It's like money for nothing and your chicks for free. That's what people are going to do. Now, think about the net result of this. Number one, it's going to cause a massive flood of gold and silver to come into China physically. It's going to deplete the Western vaults and the COMEX, and wherever there's still any metal in London or New York or Chicago or vaults or whatever that's, government money or banking system metal, that's going to be depleted, and it's going to just ship over to China, which is exactly what China wants. China is in gold accumulation stage right now. In fact, they are officially claiming that they have over 2,300 tons of gold as of June of this year. 2,300 plus tons. They have been buying gold for 20 months straight since about November of 2024. And just in June alone, they added almost 15 tons of gold to what they already hold. Now, we also know that the amount of gold that China is reporting is underreported. And so, as they are saying they have 2,346 tons, the bigger truth, at least according to experts that I've interviewed and spoken with over the years, they believe that China has more like 20,000 tons of gold. So 10 times more than they are stating, if not more. I've heard numbers even higher than that, 30,000, for example. So when you understand that Hong Kong is being positioned as a physical settlement hub to attract international gold and silver into China, where prices will be allowed to move higher naturally with natural price discovery of actual spot value of gold and silver, which is never allowed in the West, by the way. When you realize that, and you realize that the BRICS nations have been steadily working towards a concept of a gold-backed settlement currency of some kind, doesn't even have to be the yuan, just some kind of settlement system that handles international trade without using the dollar and is partially backed by gold, you realize that in order to do that, you would have to have a lot of gold, and you'd have to be able to announce an enormous amount of gold that's audited. And that looks like exactly what China is preparing to do. They're going to announce, I think, at some point a new international settlement currency system that's partially backed by gold, maybe 20% or so, and they're going to be able to show the gold, and it's probably going to be 20,000 tons or more, and they're going to have the real physical marketplace up and running, which makes sense for them also because they need silver industrially in China. They need to acquire silver for manufacturing of medical devices and solar panels and telecom, electronics, you name it. Batteries, right? High-end battery chemistry using silver. So they need to acquire a lot of silver, but they also need a lot of gold for monetary reasons, for international trade and settlements outside the dollar. So it looks to me, and I think many others are seeing the same thing, that China is preparing for an eventual, well, let me say it this way. They're going to break the Western gold and silver price manipulation system, and they're going to drain the gold and silver physically out of Western vaults. So if you put the pieces of this puzzle together, it looks like China is making a run to control the price of gold and silver by freeing it from Western paper manipulation. But in the run-up to that, China has been accumulating gold on a massive scale for several years, maybe really a decade or longer, but accelerating over the last couple of years. So this sequence of events actually makes sense. First, since the West is manipulating the price of gold and silver through paper to be artificially low, if you're China and you're smart about this, you first want to acquire gold and silver at the artificially low price by demanding delivery on the contracts. And that's what's been happening for the last several years, and that's why COMEX has been stretched thin on deliveries, etc. That's why deliveries have been delayed out of London, etc. And then once you accumulate all the physical gold and silver that you want, that you need for your project, then you allow the price to become real, which allows the value of gold and silver to rise to the actual market intrinsic value. That's what we think is about to happen. Starting July 24th, of course, it will take several months for this to work its way through the system. And then once that value rises to its natural higher point, which, depending on who you listen to, that could be gold at 6,000 an ounce or 8,000 an ounce or 10,000 or whatever, who knows. Then you have, as a gold holder, China, you have a much higher, dollar value of gold that you can use to back your settlement currency. So if you're going to back your settlement currency with 20% gold, then you need enough gold at a high enough value that equates to 20% of the amount of settlement currency that you have in circulation. And the easiest way to get there is to do exactly what I've been describing here. Accumulate a lot of gold at a discount and then end the paper manipulation as much as you can. Let the price rise to its normal point, its supply-demand point for physical spot, and then voila, you suddenly have this massive value of gold to back your settlement currency. And from there, you can maneuver to make the dollar obsolete in terms of international trade for things like oil. You notice, of course, the United States is always punishing Iran or other countries like Russia and saying, we won't let you sell oil. Well, how does the U.S. even have control? Because most oil sales are in dollars. That's how. And since the U.S. controls the dollar banking system, the SWIFT system, and all of the major banks throughout Europe, London and New York in particular, then the dollar, whoever controls the dollar, controls the ability to stop anyone from trading in dollars for oil or anything else. So by bypassing that, China will be creating a system where they can trade with the rest of the world without using the dollar and without being subjected to U.S. tariffs, which have been really hurting China, and other U.S. trade sanctions, which have been hurting China allies such as Russia and Iran in particular. But through this alternative settlement currency system, which will directly compete with the dollar, China will be able to trade with India, for example, without having to deal with U.S. sanctions. China can trade with Turkey. China can trade with North Korea, for that matter, or a U.S. ally like Japan, without the U.S. being able to interfere. That's the ultimate goal. And China, if you know anything about Chinese culture, China is a long game player. They don't think about how do we win next quarter. They think about how do we win over the next generation. They play the long game. And they have a lot of patience and they have a lot of strategic intelligence. And this plan that I've outlined here, this is a genius level plan to take away from the United States its hegemonic power over the world with its dollar weaponization, and also the West's manipulation of gold and silver markets. Through this mechanism I've described here, China can slowly take that away, force actual organic price discovery on gold and silver, and China can accumulate a much larger volume of physical gold and silver. They'll use the silver in industry, and they'll use the gold as a shoring up their settlement currency where they can show audited gold stores, actual vaulted gold that will impress the world with the fact that, oh my God, this currency really is backed by gold. It's not just a promise like you get from the United States, which has a bunch of empty vaults and a bunch of empty promises. You see? This is how China defeats the West financially without firing a single shot. Now, whoever holds gold and silver during this process is almost certainly going to be very happy that they have it, because the spot price will, like I said, almost certainly rise because it's being artificially manipulated to be kept low right now. So if you have gold and silver right now, hold on to it and watch this situation carefully. Now, the caveats here are that, number one, I don't have any super secret intel from China. I'm just giving you my best assessment based off of public information. But everything I've said here is true about the timing, like, July 24th, and about the Shanghai Gold Exchange and their plans and the expansion of the vaults in Hong Kong near the airport and all of these things. You can look all these things up, and they are indeed easily verified. Okay. However, I'm not a financial advisor, and I'm not telling you how to invest money, but I am encouraging you to understand this dynamic, because I think, and this is why I'm holding on to gold and silver, I think that gold holders of physical gold and silver, that's in your name, either in your hands or vaulted in your name, not paper gold and silver, but owners of physical gold and silver are going to see the dollar value of those metals rise dramatically as China's plan kicks in, which will evolve over more than just a few months. This is a multi-year plan, but we could begin to see the early phases of it starting July 24th. I wouldn't be surprised if gold is back to its all-time highs before the end of this year, for example, due to what's happening here that I'm describing. It may not hit that, but I wouldn't be at all surprised if it did. And from there, who knows how high it wants to go. And there's another thought here, is that maybe Judy Shelton's plan in the United States, maybe Trump and Besant are waiting on the natural value of gold to rise even higher before they announce the revaluation of the however many ounces of gold is on the Treasury balance sheet right now at $42 per ounce. I forgot the exact number of ounces, but I think it's currently valued at only $11 billion. If gold hits, let's say, $8,000 an ounce, then that would free up, I think, about $2 trillion, roughly, give or take, of basically free cash for the Treasury that it can use to buy back some of the outstanding debt and effectively lower the yields on the 10-year Treasury yields, which, of course, that is priority number one. They are working to save the debt market more than they're working to save the currency. They don't care about the dollar currency. They care about the Treasury debt market, the 10-year bond. That's what they have to save. And if they can see gold actually move up to $8,000 an ounce instead of $4,000, then they can double the amount of money that frees up for the Treasury in order to help, pay down the debt. And it's not that they care about paying down the debt per se. It's that they care about the yields on the 10-year being kept under 5%. That's the key. They got to keep them under 5%, or basically all hell breaks loose in the financial markets, and then things get really ugly very quickly in a spiraling, feedback loop of financial doom. And they don't want that to happen. So they're going to pull out all the stops. So maybe that's why this did not happen on July 4th, the revaluation, because gold wasn't valuable enough on July 4th. Maybe they're waiting for China to do this, kick gold up to 6,000 or 8,000 or more per ounce, and then they do the revaluation, and then the Treasury gets even more money, and then they can pay off even more debt. Or maybe they plan to revalue gold more than once. Maybe they'll do it soon at 4,000 and then again at 8,000. Maybe they'll do it, every year or something, who knows? Again, I don't have a crystal ball. I can't read the mind of Scott Besant. I actually don't even want to know what's going on inside that skull. But whatever it is, I don't think they put America first. I think they're putting the bankers first. And the American people who don't know what's happening are probably going to be financially, really harmed by this, which is why I'm sharing this information. So holding gold and silver is the smart play in this context. It's very clear. You're going to ride the natural price discovery increase as these events happen in China. And then if there is a revaluation announced by the Treasury sometime this year or sometime next year, then you would benefit from that tremendously by holding physical gold. Not necessarily holding paper gold or ETFs, but actually holding physical. So that's a really great reason to hold on to gold and silver if you have it. And if you want to acquire more, of course, you can acquire it through Battalion Metals. And we are an affiliate partner with Battalion Metals. And Battalion Metals is co-founded by Tucker Carlson. So it's high integrity, it's trustworthy. You can reach them at metalswithmike.com. And you can see their prices. They're very competitive, high integrity. They protect your privacy. They guarantee delivery. And they'll waive the shipping insurance fee if you use discount code RANGER. And yeah, that gives us a little bit of credit on your order, but it's very tiny because they have almost no markup, just seriously, if you were to shop around, you would see that instantly. There are a lot of like gold scammers out there that will mark up gold like 40% and try to scam retired people. Oh my God, it's a big scam out there. In fact, Tucker Carlson did a whole piece on that, a big video exposing all the scams out there. And then Tucker chose to go into business with Chris Olsen to form Battalion Metals. And I've been working with Chris Olsen for 7 years now. And then Tucker Carlson came and co-founded Battalion Metals with Chris. And that's when I became an affiliate of Battalion Metals. So that this is a high integrity operation because of the due diligence that we've all conducted in order to choose to work together. There's not a more philosophically aligned, high integrity operation in the entire business in North America. I mean, seriously, these are the guys you want to work with. So metalswithmike.com if you want to get gold and silver. If you don't, that's fine. Do what's best for you. Do your own research. Watch this situation carefully. There is risk in gold and silver, as we've seen. The market's off substantially from earlier this year, and it might still go lower. But this also might be the bottom, the new bottom, and things could change dramatically starting July 24th. I'm not predicting a massive surge on that day, just to be clear. I'm saying that's when the rules change in China, and from that point, we should start to see a slow, steady correction of price discovery because of a very sharp reduction in the ability of operators to engage in paper market manipulation of physical metals. And China is going to end up being probably the only real honest market of, Shanghai in particular, the world's most honest market of gold and silver. Whereas, London and New York and the COMEX, everything from the West is going to be considered to be very untrustworthy, highly fraudulent, a lot of paper rehypothecation of the same physical assets, a lot of excuse making on deliveries like, our forklifts aren't working again. We heard that. It's just a bunch of excuses. And ultimately probably defaults on delivery from the main COMEX vault and things like that. That's my guess. I think they're going to default in the West, but not overnight. It's going to take time for that to happen. But who knows? Maybe they'll find a way to stumble through the whole thing and they'll beg the government to bail them out or something. And that's when Besant is going to find out you can't print gold. Yeah, you can print fiat currency, you can print dollars, you can't print gold, dude. You can't print silver. Good luck with that, because it's a physical element. That's why physical is king in this marketplace. So either have physical in your hands, self-custody, or have it vaulted, physically vaulted for you in your name, so that you actually have your name on a specific quantity of ounces. I believe that's called allocated, and there's segregated storage as well. And Battalion Metals offers those services as well. If you If you want a highly secure, highly well-insured through Lloyd's of London vaulting service, they have that as well. So check them out at metalswithmike.com, and I'll keep you posted on this. We'll see what happens. It's going to be really interesting. But I'll tell you this. Look, bottom line, you know me, and I'm not saying that you should follow everything that I do on this, but I own 0 stocks, or as we say, stonks. Yeah, I don't play in the stonk market because I don't trust it. I think it's all a giant Ponzi scheme. I really don't trust the stonk market at all. So I don't own any stocks. I invest in my own company, of course. We just purchased a new ICP-MS mass spec lab instrument, by the way. That was a few $100,000. So yeah, I mean, I invest in my own company for clean foods production and testing and so on. So I guess you could say, well, yeah, I'm investing in one company, which is my own company. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. But I don't invest in anybody else's company because I don't trust the system. I don't trust counterparty risk. I don't trust the banks. I don't trust the Robin Hoods and the Fidelities and all those investment funds. I don't trust them at all. You can tell. I wouldn't give them a dime of my money because I don't think I'm ever going to see it again, frankly. I trust gold and silver either in my hands or vaulted outside the banking system. I trust land because I can, walk on it. I can see it. I trust gold and silver because it's physical and real. I trust, a giant tank of diesel fuel. I trust real physical things like that. I trust copper and platinum and palladium and, dysprosium and all the other elements. Because there they are. I can see a pile of copper or whatever. I don't trust the stonk market at all. And I don't think I ever will. So that's just me, though. And of course, I don't trust the Treasury. I don't trust municipal bonds. I don't trust any of that stuff. I don't invest in any of that stuff. I'm not saying that that's right for you. You may have found a better way to make it all work. For me personally, I don't have time to do risk assessment on a Ponzi scheme, fraudulent gambling casino known as the stonk market. So I don't even mess with it. I buy what I can trust. Gold and silver and land and diesel fuel and, high-end batteries and solar systems and things like that. And then I don't have to worry about it just vanishing the next day. But that's me. That's my take on it. Do what's best for you. Get good financial advice. Every situation is different. Yours may be very different from mine, but do what's right for you. And thank you for listening. You can follow more of my work at brightvideos.com. And of course, my articles are at naturalnews.com. Thanks for listening. Take care. I'm getting very strong .com vibes with the conversations happening today around semiconductors and AI stocks. And, financially, it's pretty easy to see that we are in an AI infrastructure bubble. Way too much money is going into these projects that have no real revenue. Not even any hope of revenue, because China has released AI models for free and open source or via API. They're dirt cheap. They're a fraction of the cost of US frontier AI models. And so the US AI companies don't have a path to profitability that I can see as long as China exists and is releasing open source models. So this overinvestment can never be paid off. But we can talk about that on the finance side with spreadsheets and analysis, and that's quite straightforward. There's also a number of games they're playing. Like, here, I'm going to invest billions of dollars in your company, and then you take that money and turn around and lease a data center from us, and then we'll book that as revenue, and that will boost the stock prices, And then you have SpaceX with its stock valuation that has now cratered from its highs. It's been trading below the IPO opening price lately. I warned you about that one. You were wise to stay away from that. So financially, the whole thing's coming down. But what about culturally? This is where it's really telling. Because culturally now, people are talking today the way they talked back in 1999. And I remember it quite clearly back then because everybody was thinking that they were going to get rich. All they had to do was buy stocks, just buy tech stocks. They were going to go sky high. They were going to go to the moon. And people were mortgaging their homes to jump in. They were selling everything to jump into the tech stocks. And the narrative at that time was that, hey, we won't even have to work again. Nobody will have to work. And even the cab drivers became stock pickers. And they would tell you during the cab, oh, did you hear about, drcoop.com? Did you hear about pets.com? Did you hear about Excite? Or Alta Vista, the search engine, this and that. And they became stock pickers. And of course, for a short while, they all appeared to be geniuses because pretty much everything you named went up in value. But that doesn't mean you're a genius. It just means you're following a bubble. So that narrative is now being heard today, especially among the younger generation that was too young back in 2000 to have lived through that crash. I mean, many of the investors today were just being born in 2000. And, here they are in their mid-20s right now thinking they're geniuses because everything they buy goes up. Oh my God, this is so easy. It's just like, just buy everything. Buy everything related to AI. Buy semiconductors. Buy, anything tech, communications equipment. And it all goes up. This is amazing. And then they tell themselves things like, how come our parents didn't figure this out? Or our grandparents, they didn't know about this. This is like this generation, we must be the smart ones. We're the only ones who have figured this out. You just buy all the tech stocks and hold it and you get rich. And then by the time you're 30, you don't have to work anymore. That's what they think. And you're hearing this kind of talk. So, of course, it's exactly the same as what we heard in 1998 and 1999 among people who were in their 20s or 30s at that time. And what really happened is those people got wiped out, of course, and they lost a significant portion of their life savings. And sadly, then years later, some of those people ended up working at Walmart as greeters. You would see like Grandma, the Walmart greeter, like, hey, Grandma, what happened? Oh, I lost everything in the .com crash, Yeah, that's what happens. It takes years away from your life. Now, when you're in your 20s, you can afford that because you've got more years yet to come, and probably you're not wealthy enough to lose a lot in your 20s, even though it may seem like it at the time. In your 30s, you might have a little bit more, but if you are above 50 and you lose 10 or 20 years of earnings, you're in a world of hurt then, because you don't have the age and the energy to earn that back. And by the way, who's going to hire you when you're already 55 in the corporate workplace? They're not looking for people who are 50 plus years old. That's not who mainstream corporations want to hire, is it? So your ability to earn back those losses is almost non-existent. And that's why capital preservation obviously is the key here versus trying to chase the latest FOMO rainbow. Capital preservation is the key. And I still say there's no better way to do that than gold and silver. And right now, gold and silver, they pulled back significantly from their highs. And a lot of that's due to the war. In fact, I think most of it's due to the war. But it's a buying opportunity. I think there's no question gold and silver will go much, much higher later this year, even if the war continues. And then when the war finally ends one day, maybe that's next year, who knows, then the metals will probably skyrocket as industry comes back online. That's my guess. That's my analysis. But hey, I'm not your financial advisor, so don't take this as financial advice. But if you do want to get gold and silver, go to Battalion Metals via metalswithmike.com because they are our sponsor of many of our shows. Metalswithmike.com. High integrity, great pricing, and they can also guard them for you in their own private vaults, which are insured by Lloyd's of London, or they can deliver them to you. Guaranteed, insured, discreet delivery. You can take self-custody, which is, you should do that with at least some portion of gold and silver. You should always have self-custody of some. And then there's zero risk of any other third party not being able to find your gold and silver. So have some of it in your hands. But if you shop with Battalion Metals, use discount code RANGER and they will waive the shipping insurance fee. In the meantime, be very wary of stocks and stock prices and the FOMO attitude out there. And understand that there's so much risk in the system right now. I mean, look at what's happening with the South Korean market. Look at what's happening in Japan with their currency and their 10-year bonds. What are they up to? Like 2.9%, very nearly, which is unbelievable out of Japan because, of course, the government there and the central bank controlled those rates for so long. They just bought, they printed and bought all the bonds they needed in order to keep the yields close to zero for a long time. And that's done. So things are happening dramatically and pretty radically. So wealth preservation is the key from this point for probably years to come. So thanks for listening. I'm Mike Adams. You can follow my work at brightvideos.com and also my articles at naturalnews.com. Take care.
It's actually worse than what most people think, because most people think if I don't see the lines, it's a no spray day. But the truth, these chemicals are still getting dumped into the stratosphere. I've always said the truth is scarier than fiction. Geoengineer said they only needed 14 planes to geoengineer the whole planet. But we're ignoring 42 million flights per year. By 2050, that's expected to double. So the only reason they abandoned climate change, because it was a way to control people, is because now they have AI. And now climate change ain't so bad. Even Bill Gates said, you know what, climate change is not so bad. We're not going to die, because they found a better way to control people.
True. To today's episode, which is a special new Down the Rabbit Hole episode, part of Decentralized TV that has a little bit different format. So Todd, tell us about what does it mean when we have a Down the Rabbit Hole episode?
It means it's an episode that isn't necessarily dedicated to decentralized living, but man, oh man, is the guest interesting. And, you know, we needed to create a category to where that we could keep everyone interested in. And I'm just excited as heck. This is going to be fun because now we can, you know, break out of the just decentralized living and bring a lot of guests and topics and ideas to the table that I think people are going to love.
Yeah, well said. I would also add that this interview may not be as practical as what we normally do. And also, as a disclaimer, there may be points that are presented that Todd and I don't agree with, and that's totally okay. But we think overall, the content is worth your time and attention to consider. So enjoy this episode of Decentralized TV Down the Rabbit Hole. Welcome to today's episode of Decentralized TV Down the Rabbit Hole. And I'm Mike Adams, the founder of Decentralized TV, with my co-host, Todd Pittner, from the great state of Florida. Welcome, Todd.
Mike, great seeing you. I know you've had quite the week with your voice, and I just wanted to give you a little bit of insight, just a little bit of Todd coaching, you know, because I am your senior, right? I'm a few years older than you. But when you're practicing the fire blowing and breathing, you don't inhale, you exhale.
Oh man, no, it was so funny. I mean, my voice is mostly recovered now, but I made the dumbest mistake for somebody who knows about nutrition. I'm growing loblolly pine trees. I'm growing them. They have pine needles that have shikimic acid, which is the perfect, you just make pine needle tea. And yet I attended an event, somebody was shedding all over me, and I wasn't the only one who got impacted. And I just let it go for a few days unwisely. I should have been drinking the pine needle tea. When I finally did, because my voice was getting wrecked, then things started to turn around immediately. But it was the dumbest noob mistake, is to grow your own medicine and walk right past it and not use it. And I'm guilty of it. That's just what happened.
You know what, Mike? When on your broadcast recently, I thought you were going to say you made the biggest mistake of actually attending this event. Just because there were people.
That was also a mistake, yeah. Because I don't know if it's people's laundry detergent combined with spike protein and vaccine shedding or whatever, but it didn't.
Well, you sound a lot better than when I first heard your voice afterwards.
Yeah. Hey,
good job.
I feel great. I'm just waiting for the voice to recover. In the meantime, we've got an amazing guest coming on today.
We do.
I want to get right to him because he is an expert in so many things, but one of them is weaponization of the atmosphere, geoengineering, and how these systems are being turned against us through things like engineered famine and so much more. So how about Todd? Why don't you bring him in?
Yeah, Jim Lee, how are you? Welcome to the show. I recommended that you come on because, as many people know, I installed a food forest in my backyard 3 years ago. And this past January, there was definitely a Tampa, Florida weather-engineered weather modification event.
Oh, yes.
It doesn't stay 25, 27 degrees in Florida for 2 weeks straight. So man, they were spraying like crazy. So I installed, we did a whole episode on it, Mike and I did. I installed a very, very unique device in my back property that literally right before my eyes, it busted up the chemtrails, and it has been blue skies ever since. So this is a topic that very much interests me. And I couldn't be more excited to have you on the show because when I started going down this weather modification rabbit hole, there you were. And then there's climateviewer.com. And man, oh man, people, you can spend a decade just listening to Jim talk about all of this.
Well, I'm pretty sure that Wilhelm Reich would be very proud of you for installing that in your backyard. Yeah, the history of weather control, it really, it's amazing to me that when I started this about 2 decades ago, the internet was still, social media had just been born. There was a lack of information. And originally I just started out to prove to the moderators on the Google Earth community that I wasn't crazy for mapping out weather modification projects. And that really started the ball rolling into just archiving everything I could find and learn about the topic. From mapping it on climateviewer.org to, like, in 2015, creating weathermodificationhistory.com. It's 850 newspaper articles from the 1800s to present, 180 timeline entries with all the references available for each event. And about 1,100 weather modification and climate engineering patents in a searchable database. I've done a lot of homework, and when I do my homework, I want to make sure that it's available to the public. So everything that I've done, I'm a programmer, I'm a graphics artist. I coded these websites myself so that you don't have to listen to this redneck from Sumter, South Carolina, talk to you ad nauseum about this. If you're interested in the topic, you can go to my website and spend, like you said, the next 5 years reading and learning more at your own pace. And I think that that's been probably the best thing that I've done, over these 2 decades is compiling all this information in a place and then making it palatable, easy to access, so that people can understand how complex this topic is, where the nuance is, where the dangers are, understand the technology and the people behind it, what their motives are. And that's kind of where I come at it from.
Jim, real quick, Mike, I just wanted to correct myself. I said climateviewer.com. Is it .org or .com?
It's both. Climateviewer.com, originally I created that in 2012. I had a blog before that. But honestly, I didn't just eat the red, pill. I drank the whole bottle. So I ended up deleting 400 articles that I had written on a previous blog and starting from scratch in 2012 with climateviewer.com, which was a painful experience. but I had realized that I was under the influence of something called slave speak. And I didn't understand how people could use science fiction that's 70% science and 30% BS to really skew my view of the world. And once I realized what these manipulating words were, I was able to go back and read my own articles in disgust. And I said, you know what? This is not up to par. I just got to start from scratch. And that's what I did. So climateviewer.com is my blog. That's my original homepage. And from there, I made a map, Climate Viewer 3D, which is on climateviewer.org, weathermodificationhistory.com. I just recently created chemtrailfacts.com. It's only 5% done, so don't judge me if you go there. It'll eventually be as large, if not larger, than weathermodificationhistory.com. And this is just something I love to do. You know, I'm a creative type, and I remember everything I read, so I might as well put it down so other people can read it.
Jim, this is awesome. It's so great to have you on the show and to be able to meet you here. It seems like this is long overdue, actually. We should have connected with you sooner. So Todd, thank you so much for making this connection. But what I want to ask you is that until, let's say, the last 5 years, the very idea that some governments or some entities in the world would be weaponizing the weather for some nefarious purpose, that was considered a very fringe, out there kind of idea. But not so much these days. In the post-COVID era, a lot of people realize that things were weaponized against humanity. And then today you look at governments, even the US government, and you see that everything that can be weaponized is being weaponized. You know, the banking system, right? The dollar, regulatory, controls by the EPA, this and that. So can you tell us, tell our audience about what has changed in the time that you have been looking at this? And are you seeing now that it's much easier for people to understand that this is a very real thing that's happening and it's not just some science fiction?
So you really have to, those who forget the past are doomed to repeat it. And what really shocked me was that, I was born in 1976. In 1976, the United Nations signed the Environmental Modification Convention Treaty. This was a weather warfare ban in 1976. Now, of course, I had to do some backtracking to figure out how did we get here. Jack Anderson walks into Lyndon Johnson's Oval Office, sees a note on his desk, and it says something about continue Operation Popeye plus weather modification over Laos, and he ends up publishing that in the Pentagon Papers. And Jack Anderson, if you don't know, everybody said the CIA was trying to kill him because of Watergate. I think it might have had something to do with the fact that the CIA, the U.S. Air Force, and the U.S. Navy out of China Lake, California, they were doing weather warfare over Vietnam for 5 years. And this was run through a individual at the Pentagon called SACSA, S-A-C-S-A. We won't get too deep into the weeds here, but eventually this was published in the New York Times. And once it became public in 1972, basically Congress was full with a bunch of, old bald white men who are going, wait a minute, we can control the weather? I can only imagine the shock, that this hits the New York Times, that we were doing weather warfare. The slogan was "Make mud, not war," because a play on the hippies, "Make love, not war." The idea was to flood out the Ho Chi Minh Trail to make it impassable for the Viet Cong by enhancing the monsoon rains. And they were using silver iodide and lead iodide.
Oh, wow.
Something that most people don't know even to this day. People throw around Operation Popeye, Project Popeye all the time. They don't really know all the details. I'm in the deets. That's where I love to live. So interestingly enough, the CIA ran this joint program with two branches of the military, and not even the Secretary of Defense knew that it was going on. In fact, he testified in Congress that he had no knowledge that it was even happening. So flash forward, the United Nations bans this thing. They make it extremely weak, like they do with anything, because we passed a limited test ban treaty to ban upper atmospheric nuclear explosions after like Operation Starfish Prime, Hardtack Teak. Then the Russians did Project K. So they were trying to blow up the ionosphere with nuclear bombs. And they said, you know what, maybe we should stop. But when they passed that ban, they actually created a way to know if somebody was breaking the ban. It doesn't matter if murder is illegal if there's no way to catch or punish somebody that murders people, correct? So they created the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty Organization and the International Monitoring System, which is a bunch of seismographs and infrasound recorders so that they can listen for the sound of a nuke going off and know that somebody violated the treaty. The problem with NMOD is they never created a way to catch somebody doing weather warfare. So since 1976, there has been a ban on weather warfare, but there's been no way to catch anybody doing it. So that's your number one point you need to focus on. Number two, China Lake, California, the U.S. Navy Warfare Center, they also weaponized Project Storm Fury, which was a hurricane modification project by NOAA. This was going on during the 60s and 70s. And during that time, they were trying to steer hurricanes into Cuba to destroy Castro's sugar crops. They were also creating drought with cloud seeding. Now, this is something that seems kind of, backwards. You just said you make it rain, you make floods with cloud seeding. Well, you can also make a drought with cloud seeding. This is called overseeding. This is when you put too many particles in the sky and there's not enough water vapor, or you cause all of the water in the clouds to rain out in one location so that when they pass over the island of Cuba, they're dry. And that's exactly what the CIA did to Cuba. They were cloud seeding in the Gulf of America. I love saying that. And to make, basically they called it a rain embargo. And this is documented in newspaper articles as well as firsthand accounts, but to this day, we don't even know the name of that project.
Wasn't this more recently also with Iran? Where
exactly
after that,
where I was going to go next.
Okay.
So we're syncing up here.
Okay.
So then in 2010, Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, he said that European countries were stealing Iran's rain. Okay. And then he said it again in 2011 and in 2012 in front of the United Nations. Flash forward to 2018, Brigadier General Gholam Jalali, an Iranian, I don't know if he's our GC or he's a general from Iran. He said, Israel is stealing our clouds. The next year, he said, Israel and other surrounding countries are making our clouds barren. And then finally, I believe it was 2021, he said, Israel and the United Arab Emirates are stealing our clouds. Now, I think we all remember the Dubai floods that occurred.
Yeah.
And it seemed to me like payback, because when I looked at the weather system that came through there, it's going east to west right across the Strait of Hormuz into Dubai. And would you put it past the Iranians to dump a bunch of cloud seeding materials into a already an atmospheric river already headed towards Dubai? I don't know. At the end of the day, the thing is, you can never say for certain. And there are so many people that speak with certainty. And I never speak with certainty because I know that we cannot prove these things. And that is the problem. We know that the technology exists. We know that the history of weather warfare exists. We know that the ability to do these things and the nefarious purposes, the clandestine operations, they have happened. They probably are going on today. It's proving it in a court of law that's the tough part.
But Jim, I'm sorry to interrupt, but about Iran, what was so notable about that was, the city of Tehran was almost on the verge of having to be evacuated because the drought was so severe. And yet then after Iranian drones destroyed that U.S. radar installation and I think that was in the UAE, but I'm not sure.
It was Qatar and Jordan. But
okay,
yeah, go ahead.
But yeah, after that, I think it was $1 billion radar installation that was supposed to be, a military radar. Maybe it was dual purpose, because after that, then the natural rains came to Iran, like they used to. Does that strike you as some supporting evidence anyway?
See, now here's where I get highly disagreeable. When I hear these claims, then I immediately go, is this possible? And, I can hold to opposing thoughts and I can juggle until I finally go, you know what, this hand's heavier. And when I looked into the radars that were actually destroyed, they were both what are called an ANTPY2. This is an X-band radar. It's part of the THAAD system. These are forward launching missiles. Basically, the idea of the Cold War was we would point big radars at the sky, phased array radars, and see the ICBMs coming in on the way down, and then we would try to shoot them down before they hit the ground. With THAAD, they turned that on its head. The ANTPY2 is an X-band radar with a 3,000-mile radius.
Wow.
And it can literally, if you parked one of these in Los Angeles, California, and you threw a baseball into space from Washington, D.C., it could track that ball into space up to close to like 12,000 miles. Not only track the baseball, but tell you which way the baseball was spinning. That's how accurate these are.
Crazy.
Now, the obvious next question is, does it have the power requirements or the frequency requirements to actually interact with weather? The problem is, no, it doesn't. It's X-band. So it's non-ionizing radiation. This is something that, I constantly, get into fights with people all the time because I'm like, you don't understand, RF, the way it interacts with weather. And this is where I firmly land. Before I make this point, let me go to this. I think the more plausible reason why the rains returned to Iran is because just like at the Battle of Antietam, black powdered rifles were being shot both sides of the field. Boom, 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 boom. And all of that black powder raised up in the air. And after the valley was filled with blood, it rained on the field. And that is because all of that soot, all that black powder, that black carbon is an excellent cloud condensation nuclei. So if you're dropping bunker busters, which are going into red clay dirt, which is aluminosilicate, then you're putting a lot of black carbon soot and aluminum into the sky, which acts as a great cloud condensation nuclei. I think that that's the more plausible scenario, that between burning fuel tankers, burning, military boats, bunker buster bombs and all of that, that you just had such a plethora of, cloud seeds available to to dump a lot of rain. Plus it's kind of hard to keep your weather warfare thing going on whenever there's drones going to and fro, who knows? But as far as the X-band radar, this is where I firmly land on the radar thing. There has never been one single documented case, aside from cloud ionizers and laser beams, of an electromagnetic frequency altering the weather. And I say this knowing people like David Miles from used to be Acquiesce, then Miles Research, and Atmospherica is now his company. He claimed that he could do this. I said, show me the equipment. He never would. Climate Control Global Trading LLC out of Dubai. They wanted to hire me to, pimp their tech. They said that they could stop storms and do all kinds of things with radars. I said, show me the tech. Let me talk to your Russian scientist. Like, how'd you know he was Russian? We had a Zoom call. Show me your tech. They can't do it. There has never been a single peer-reviewed, published, not even peer-reviewed, published paper on modifying the weather with an electromagnetic frequency other than lasers and cloud ionizers, and both of them work on the process of ionization. So non-ionizing radiation has almost no effect on the weather because the sky is a river. We have entropy to deal with, the inverse square law. It's very complicated, but it's not sexy. So like, I don't go for the sexy. I never tell people what they want to hear. I just tell them the truth based on what I've been able to learn and the entire history of weather control. Nobody's ever done it, not even once. And the same thing is true with like Thomas Bearden. People talk about scalar waves all the time. Nobody in the history of man has ever demonstrated a scalar wave. Not once, not one longitudinal wave ever in the history of man. And the reason I say this is because if somebody did, with the amount of money that goes into the weather modification business, if somebody did, there'd be an Elon Musk type dude out there going, I have pioneered a new way to control the weather. And the United Arab Emirates rainfall enhancement program would throw money at them. If you make it rain on them, they will make it rain on you. So that's where I come at it from. I've heard many claims. What do you think?
Well, no, that's really interesting. I completely agree with you on this so-called scalar waves. I always hear people talking about scalar waves. I'm like, what are you talking about? What are your scalar waves? And they never really have a good answer on that. But on the ionization, now remember, I run a mass spec lab, and we have an ionizing element in front of our ICP. And so we have an RF generator there that ionizes a stream of liquid. It takes a tremendous amount of energy, as you well know,
in
obviously.
A very tiny place.
Yeah, exactly. So my question to you is, I completely agree with what you just said about typical X-band radar doesn't have the energy density per square or cubic centimeter, let's say, to cause the ionization of a typical atmospheric vapor, for example. But with high enough energy, if that were to be applied, I can ionize lots of things. But you said lasers, you understand that can work, right? So is it really just a spectrum of how much energy is being concentrated into a small area?
You said the word power density.
Power density.
This is where people get lost. So they say like NexRad can control the weather. Well, NexRad's about 1 million watts. Let's be generous. Let's say it's 1.5 million watts peak. Well, what's the effective radiated power? The effective radiated power is power in times dB gain, the sensitivity of the radar itself, 32 gigawatts. I'm going to throw that out there. 32 billion watts according to the government websites. All right, that sounds like a whole lot, okay? But the problem is you then have to figure in something called the duty cycle. And the duty cycle is how often it's on. So now it's all of that times 0.04, which gives
it's cycling.
us...
It's cycling.
Yeah, it's cycling.
Yeah.
It's clicking on and off. How often is it clicking on and off? Well, the duty cycle of a WSR 88D NexRad Doppler radar is 0.04, which means now that 1 million watts just turned into 1,400 watts.
And it's being spread out in a 3D space.
Right.
Which
so
is
it's a volume, and the laws of entropy apply. We have a fluid medium, which is moving. So you're not cooking the same spot.
Good point.
It's not static. It's constantly flowing. So if you were to take a blowtorch lighter and a very small stream, let's say that stream was about this wide, and you made it like a PVC pipe and you just heated that thing, would you actually heat all the water? You wouldn't, because the water is still flowing. So the water you just warmed is now going down here and it's cooling and new water's coming in. And that's what's happening with radars. So people focus a lot on this because, and it started, I'd say circa 2010 with DutchSense really popularized the harp ring idea. And no shade, Dudge, don't get mad. We've been through this, bro. But at the end of the day, that stuff, I think, really distracts and detracts from the arguments that would lead to solutions. And that's where I really, I take alms against, people who make these claims with such certainty, because what they're actually doing is they're distracting from companies like Stardust Solutions, an Israeli startup that's talking about geoengineering and dumping chemicals by 2030. and they want to be a government contractor. They have $60 million worth of venture capital. You should be concerned about Stardust Solutions and stop talking so much about NextRad. These are the kinds of things where I go, at least to my audience. And that's why they respect me, because I give it to them straight. I say, look, and I've had multiple people come on to try to debate me about this. And I'm saying, I'm willing to be wrong, but you're going to have to come with the evidence. And if you come with the evidence and you can convince me, guess what? I'm going to convince everybody else. But that you have to be open to the possibility that you are wrong. And I always am.
And also I should mention too, sunlight energy alone is probably orders of magnitude larger than the radar energy that's impacting any cubic area, any volume.
Excellent point. So, and this is exactly what I say to people when they say that NextRads are, and we have a mutual friend, let's just say that. And he says that NextRads are steering hurricanes. And I say, well, that's interesting, because the sun is about 1,300 watts per meter squared at the ground level. Okay. The NextRad is barely breaking 96 watts per meter squared. If you
and
stop,
that depends on the distance too, right?
Yeah. I mean, if you were like staring it in the face in the danger zone where it says humans don't go here, you're going to fry your brain. It's about 96 watts per meter squared. A hurricane is 10 to the 16 joules per second. So we're talking about 10 quadrillion watts per meter squared
of kinetic energy in that case. Yeah.
So you mean to tell me that thermally, kinetically, any way you can imagine that this NextRad is going to somehow impact that? That's like going up to a bear with a toothpick and going, I'm going to kill the bear with the toothpick. Watch me move it. The bear's just going to run you over. So the scale matters. And I don't think that people really, they take, and that's why I say I was guilty of it too. When I started out, I wanted to prove to everybody that the NextRads were steering the weather because I thought Dutch was cool. So I went and I mapped out every Doppler radar in North America. And then I watched the weather every single day. And you know what I saw? I never saw a single cloud change directions. And I was like, maybe I'm wrong here. Same thing with HARP. I watched HARP every single time it was on. I have ham radio operators who are friends of mine. You can tune into 2.8 to 10 megahertz. You can listen to HARP when it's on. Now they announce when it's on. Before, when the U.S. Air Force and the U.S. Navy was doing it, we had to all, get together and say, oh, HARP's on now. But every time HARP would come on, we would monitor everything from temperature, humidity, visual satellite observations. I wanted to be that guy that caught the smoking gun evidence. I spent 3 years of my damn life trying to get a video of HARP cooking the weather, and it never happened. Every single time it came on, there was nothing. I mean, absolutely not one meteorological data point that I could go, you know what, this 3.6 million watt, 5 billion watt effective radiated power, 72 foot tall antennas with 180 of them, and no weather ever changed. So I started to refocus myself, like I said, and what I've come to the realization is that it was Vincent Schaefer, Irving Langmuir, and Bernard Vonnegut who invented cloud seeding in 1946 at the General Electric labs. Irving Langmuir said that 1 milligram of silver iodide under optimum conditions releases as much heat energy as one atomic bomb. So let's compare the two.
Wait, hold on a second. I'm sorry to interrupt, but so I think from what you're saying, that cloud seeding is the primary method by which rainfall is caused right now, and I know they're using drones for this right now. At least I've seen a lot of reports of that. Yeah. Silver iodide. I've heard before of ratios of 1 milligram of silver iodide unleashing a certain volume of water. I've heard those ratios before, but I've never heard what you're talking about, a thermal relationship. So I'm a little bit, can you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, and if you'll give me just a second, I'll show you.
Okay, yeah, because this is really
even better, right? So, and this kind of blew my mind when I heard it, because I was like, that can't be true. That just can't be true. But and here let me see if I can share screen real quick. I'm sending a request.
Okay, yeah, let's turn on the screen share. Is it okay? Once you share your screen, we may have to reconfigure the layout here. So just stand by.
All right. So
okay, yeah, we're seeing your screen. We're seeing a man. There we go.
Irving. That is Irving Langmuir, Weather as a Weapon. And he said, and I was wrong, it wasn't 1, it was 30. In the amount of energy liberated, the effect of 30 milligrams of silver iodide under optimum conditions equals that of 1 atomic bomb.
And now, what's he describing then? Rainfall?
He is talking about the amount of latent energy, the heat that is generated by the chemical reaction between silver salt and water. That's what he's talking about. So the chemical reaction that occurs produces enough heat for that.
That doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense, but what was the guy name? Oh God, the father of weaponized weather. It was on Alex Jones. Gosh, I'm drawing. I never draw a blank. Anyway, this is Vincent Schaefer. So this is just an example of stuff from weather modification history, and then the original GE scientists caused snow to form in cloud, but they actually ended up causing floods. Blame Air Force for floods. This is Irving Langmuir saying that, yes, at Alamogordo, that they actually finally, I told them they must stop. Things are getting serious. We stopped on July 2nd. On July 7th, the flood about devastated Omaha. This is the guy who invented cloud seeding, saying, yes, we damn near destroyed Omaha, and we were doing it at Alamogordo, New Mexico. And similarly, this is Vincent Schaefer saying cloud seeding cause of U.S. floods. This is 1961.
Yeah.
So the point I'm trying to make here is, and I'm gonna pop back out of the share, that when you talk about, like, even with hurricane modification, in 2008, the Department of Homeland Security did a hurricane modification workshop. This was following Katrina in 2005. So the Obama administration got with Bill Gates, Ken Caldera, and the three horsemen of the apocalypse who invented geoengineering. Let's see, it was wow, I'm doing it again. Anyway, the knuckleheads from Lawrence Livermore National Lab, Dr. Evil, and these group of people all met together and made a bunch of hurricane modification patents in January, like right at New Year's Eve. I think they had a party together. Nathan Myhrvold, the patent troll, was with Bill Gates, and he had a whole bunch of geoengineers in the room. So they all came up with the idea to steer hurricanes. Let's stop the next Katrina. But in those hurricane patents, it said something that was pretty disturbing. Why don't we inform a party that a hurricane's going to do X amount of damage, get a payment from them, and steer the hurricane another way? So
what?
This is
like then there's going to be an auction. Whoever pays the most money avoids the damage.
Exactly. This is disaster capitalism on the U.S. Patent Office. You can read it. It's on weathermodificationhistory.com.
So the poor people get drowned out is basically what that. Yeah.
Texas Oil Company says, you know what? I don't want the hurricane to hit me. Poor people in New Orleans, they get wrecked.
Right.
That's basically, weather for hire. And of course, in 2012, I was debating Ken Caldera on this. I said, dude, you guys are sick. Like you claim like you're like this benevolent force for, saving us from climate change. But in reality, you're out here, monetizing steering hurricanes. And he's like, we've already said that any money we made from that, we would donate to charity. I'm like, yeah, right, buddy. Now that you've been caught and we're saying this in public on your forum, you would say that. An asshole would say. Anyway, So the Department of Homeland Security in 2008 had a hurricane modification workshop in Boulder, Colorado. And at that conference, scientists came with their best ideas. How can we steer or mitigate a hurricane? And guess what? All of them, like all but maybe one, which was cloud ionization, all of them were chemical because they've always been chemical, from Project Cirrus, the Project Storm Fury, to the Department of Homeland Security in 2008. It's always been chemicals. And carbon black dust has been one of the secret chemicals that most people have never even heard of. In 1958, Florence Van Straten was able to create clouds on demand by just dumping liquid-filled carbon black dust, or just big bags of powder carbon black dust out the back of a plane. So she was able to make chemtrails, big stripes of cirrus clouds, on demand in 1958. In 1974, William Gray wrote a paper called Carbon Dust Absorption of Solar Radiation. And the idea was, if you dump this black material into a hurricane, because it's black, it absorbs that 1,300 watts per meter squared of the sun. Anybody who's ever sat their bare ass on a black hood of a car during the summer knows that will burn your butt cheeks. And that is because black absorbs all waves of light radiation. So the idea of using carbon black dust in a hurricane goes back to 1974. Well, at this hurricane modification workshop, Dr. Mosh Alamaro from MIT University said, why don't we use carbon black aerosol to steer hurricanes? And that was, just a regurgitation of things that have been proposed in the past. And in addition to that, I have 3 FOIAs, one from the U.S. Air Force, two from the U.S. Navy, which mention carbon black dust by name in them. These are Freedom of Information Act requests done by the sunshineproject.org, which was deleted from the internet. I found it on archive.org. Finally, last point to put in your hat, during the Owning the Weather in 2025 documents that were published by the U.S. Air Force Academy, there's a timeline on that sucker. And in it, it says it was published in 1995 and 96. And it says 2005, technologies to be developed by the Department of Defense, CBD. And I ain't talking about cannabinoid oil. It said carbon black dust.
Whoa.
2005. The 2 FOIAs I have are from 1994. It was literally the year before that was published. Says to be developed by 2005. What happened in 2005? Oh yeah, Katrina happened in 2005. It's coincidental AF. Last point I would make is this. On the whole hurricane weirdness, I'm going to throw my tinfoil hat on, and I'm going to give you one that most people haven't heard. Since that 2005 Katrina, there was a 10-year hurricane drought. Look it up. It's still on Google. They were talking all about it. No major hurricane made landfall for 10 years straight until Donald Trump came into office. And what did he do on day one? He canceled the Paris Climate Accord. And who likes to steer hurricanes and mess with the weather? Climate scientists. So what happened that year? 3 freaking big old hurricanes hit all us rednecks in the Southeast in the same year. Coincidence? Weather warfare? Payback? I don't know. But that's the problem with there being no verification regime for geoengineering, for weather warfare, for any of this. It's all intentionally that way.
Hey, Jim, first of all, I just want to say that I miss the good old days when the only thing falling from the sky was bird poop. And I just kind of want to officially, if somebody is managing the weather, I'd like to file a complaint about Florida humidity. And speaking of Florida, the Florida legislature passed SB 56 in 2025, repealing weather modification permitting and prohibiting atmospheric releases intending to affect weather, temperature, climate, or sunlight intensity. Now, I live in Florida. I have discerning eyes, and I call bullshit. The law is simply political theater, symbolic nonsense. Look, Jim, I don't need all the answers. I just need someone to explain why the sky is suddenly has more activity than my neighborhood Facebook group. How do we scientifically debunk the alleged ban? Because I see it, Jim. There's no ban over Florida.
So this is where, this is probably the most controversial topic that I talk about is, chemtrails. And, I've looked at 20 years of people making claims about chemtrails. And here's the rub. Banning weather modification and geoengineering is a good thing. Can you actually enforce it? Can you enforce banning cloud seeding? Yes. In fact, multiple states, Texas is probably the best example of it, has the most cloud seeding projects of just about anywhere. They have the Texas Department of Licensing and Regulation, TDLR, not TLDR. And they actually, you have to get a license from the state in order to even do it. Otherwise, you're breaking the law. And they've been doing that forever. So I said to Representative Monty Fritz from Tennessee, when he passed the first legislation in the nation, banning weather modification geoengineering. I like what you're doing. It's not going to change the trails in the sky. And nobody wanted to listen. So then I proceeded to go on to Twitter, which eventually became X. And I started to tell everybody the chemtrails are going to stop for the next 2 days. But on Thursday, the chemtrails will be back in force in Tennessee. Hashtag Illuminati. And of course, people were freaking out going, like, how the hell did he know that? How can you predict the chemtrails? So the same thing happened. I'm hanging out with, I don't want to name drop, but I'm hanging out with the people that were behind SB 56. And I'm trying to warn them about what happened in Tennessee. Because in Tennessee, after people, the hopium turned into copium, and then they realized they thought they were going to see all of the sky just suddenly turn blue, that we banned the thing, that we were told that those stripes in the sky were geoengineering and weather modification. It's banned. Why are they still here? Now people started threatening the Department of Environmental Protection, DEP, in Tennessee. They had to move the government workers out of their building and put them into protective custody because of chemtrails. So, same thing happens in Florida. They ban the cloud seeding. They ban the weather modification, geoengineering. Now, I made a prediction when Monty Fritz did this. I said, other states are going to do this, and this is good. But I'm willing to bet my left testicle that nobody west of the Mississippi will ever ban cloud seeding. And the reason why is simple. There hasn't been cloud seeding east of the Mississippi since like two examples in the 1980s and before that the 1960s, because we don't need it east of the Mississippi River. West of the Mississippi River, Project Skywater, funded by the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation, ground-based cloud seeding generators cover the entire Rocky Mountains. Idaho Power Company runs all the cloud seeding generators in Idaho. Sacramento Municipal Utility District runs the cloud seeding operations. If you pay your water bill in Sacramento, or let's say Mount Shasta, I'm not going to say any names here, but I told Mount Shasta guy, hey, if you don't like weather modification, maybe you should go down to the Sacramento Municipal Utility District and tell them to stop. You could even organize a protest. You're never going to stop it out there because people aren't focused on that. They're focused on the lines in the sky. So to your question, we have been able to predict contrail formation since the 1940s. This is called the Schmidt-Appelman criterion. I met a guy, and he's in my Telegram chat, t.me/climate chat. If anybody wants to meet him, his name's Jeff. You can go ask him yourself. Jeff was a Navy meteorologist. He worked on an aircraft carrier, and his job specifically was to tell the guys that flew the planes, avoid these regions or you're going to make white stripes in the sky, which are going to give away the location of our freaking aircraft carrier. During World War II, B-17 B-17G flying fortresses were flying bombers over Germany, leaving big white stripes behind them, and they were driven by propellers. So make that make sense. If chemtrails is a new phenomenon, it's only happened just recently, then something's not jiving here, at least according to me, because I'm looking at the big picture here. And once I understood what the Schmidt-Appelman criterion was, that there are these specific conditions called ice supersaturated regions, which will determine whether a contrail is short, whether a contrail is long and linear and then evaporates, or if it sticks around, if it turns into a cirrus cloud. Now, if you look up chemtrails or geoengineering, you're going to read a lot of stuff about this, and there's going to be a lot of conjecture and a lot of people pretending to be scientists. I am not one. I'm just a nerd, and I remember what I read.
But Jim, hold on. Let me interrupt here. And just on behalf of our audience, nobody in our audience is saying that every contrail is a chemtrail.
And I fully agree with that.
Right,
so,
right. Because
so
the contrail is a normal phenomenon that you are describing the physics behind that. But what some people would say is that there are other cases where there are substances mixed with jet fuel or there are sprayers on planes. I think that's what. Can you address that?
Yeah, I can. So, and that's the purpose. That's why I created chemtrailfacts.com, because I've collected at this point, I think I have 120 examples of mud pumps and pipes. And I'm just going to go straight to, like at this point, we can't avoid it. In the dimming, Dane Wigington shows some pipes that are sticking out of the back of the plane. It's the only example in this 2 hours of film that he has where he shows pumps, 2 little pipes. Those pipes are on an Airbus A319. They are pylon drains. I actually have the patent. You can go to chemtrailfacts.com right now and bring it up on the screen if you want to see it yourself. The patent from Airbus, so they were not retrofitted nozzles. They were made in the factory. They are for engine fuel or oil leaks that happen in the pylon, the nacelle, to keep it from exploding. I actually interviewed some people who work on the flight line just to verify this myself. Personally, I said, dude, is this actually what this is? He's like, yeah, man. You take your finger, you stick it up there. If you feel oil or gas in that little hole, then that plane is not taking off, and we got to go in there and we got to figure out what's going on. So that's one example. Well, there's 120 other examples, like pretty popular one shows the back of like a C-130, and it's got these big pipes sticking out the back and these huge trails. Well, people go, well, that's proof of my chemtrails. No, it's not. That's actually a Malaysian C-130. The Malaysian flag and the American flag look pretty darn similar. But I go to archive.org, or I bring up the original website, and I'm showing this to a friend. It's a mutual friend. We both know him. Because he sent the picture to me. I said, dude, that is saltwater cloud seeding in Malaysia in a C-130. Here's the original article that the picture came from. And he's like, well, damn. And then he sends me another pump and pipe. And I'm like, that's the modular aerial spray system from Youngstown Air Reserve Base aerial spraying unit. It is a sprayer. It does have pumps and pipes. They do adulticide, so they spray for mosquitoes. They spray oil dispersants out of it. Once again, C-130.
So how would they disperse carbon black dust? In a powder form? Or what? How has that been done?
So with Dr. Florence Van Straten, when she did it in 1958, she said that she was able to suspend it in a liquid and just dump it out of the back of a, like a C-130. They just let the bag down and they put some liquid and mixed some carbon black dust in it and made a stream, and it made a stream of clouds. Then they came along right back through the same clouds and they dumped powdered, no water, just powdered form of it. And all of those clouds disappeared. It goes back to the cloud seeding or overseeding. If you have too many particles and not enough water vapor, then the water droplets can't get big enough to fall on the ground. So when you overseed the sky, there's not enough water vapor available to make a cloud that's going to rain. And that's what they were able to do in 1958. So very similarly right now, we've had so many changes, and the reason why we have so many lines, the reason why we have so many crosshatches, zigzags, and everything in between is because they reduced something called the RSVM, reduced vertical separation minimum, RVSM. And what it did was, before, planes had to stay 2,000 feet apart when they were flying, when they passed each other. And they said, you know what? We're going to reduce that to 1,000 feet. So now you can compact more planes into the area, which is filled with ice supersaturated regions. Each plane, when it burns a liter of jet fuel, produces 1.24 liters of water. So you generate more water than you actually burn fuel. Make that make sense, because it's H2O. So the hydrogen plus oxygen coming into the engine produces water.
It's pulling the water vapor out of the atmosphere.
So, but it's also making more water than was there originally. So you're actually super saturating the air up there. And then you're introducing a stream of black carbon, which is not carbon black like we were talking about earlier. There's two different things. They're chemically distinct. One is black carbon. Carbon black is like 95% elemental carbon, whereas black carbon is soot, is like you burn wood, or you burn jet fuel. So black carbon gets coated in graphene, gets coated in sulfuric acid, and contains aluminum, barium, strontium, vanadium, molybdenum, copper, nickel, lead, magnesium, manganese, and the list goes on. Abigail and et al. 2016 study, chemical characterization of freshly emitted particles with mass spectrometry. Anyway, so all those chemicals are in the jet fuel because it was in the crude oil, it wasn't refined out, and it produces, in 2019, the Gaia study said that 44 million pounds of nanoparticles were produced by the airline industry. That's 280 septillion nanoparticles during 2019, just that year. So what we're seeing in the sky is atmospheric conditions mixed with jet fuel emissions, but that's not it. And everybody likes to call me generally the jet fuel guy. They miss the other point. The other point of the Abigail paper was that they also detected engine lubricant oil in the stream. So the oil, the lubricants, that's in the stream as well. Also, erosion of the engine itself, because some of those metals were not detected in the fuel, but they were components of what the engine was made from. When you're up at flight altitude, there's a lot of radiation, and there's something called the Wigner effect. Have you ever heard of that?
Mm-mm.
So this is basically radiation causes the breakdown of metals. It causes it to erode. So you've got these high bypass turbofans, which every time, and you can go ask anybody who works on a flight line about this. What are they doing when they check the plane when it's on the ground? They're looking for micro fractures in one of those fan blades because they're constantly eroding. They have to be replaced. Internal engine parts, they're always eroding. These are excellent cloud condensation nuclei. So the long story short of this is all of these particles are coming out of planes, and in the right conditions, they're going to form cirrus clouds. I don't want to say chemtrails or contrails. I call them plane farts. But at the end of the day, once the plane farts are in the right condition, they're going to make clouds. Here's the rub. People want to call it climate engineering. They want to call it geoengineering. They want to call it specifically stratospheric aerosol injection. This drives me batshit crazy. Because if you fly into the stratosphere, you will not create a cloud. And that is because there is a temperature inversion that happens at the tropopause. The tropopause is the dividing line between the troposphere, where all the weather we see is, and the stratosphere, where the ozone layer and all that is. The reason why geoengineers want to put chemicals into the stratospheric aerosol injection, is to whiten the sky. It will not make clouds. It will make the sky look milky white. Does your sky look milky white, Todd?
Sometimes.
Well, hold on. But the stratospheric aerosol injection, that's a term used by the government itself, as you know. And that's to make the sun reflect off of the stratosphere. And the reason they choose the stratosphere is so that it stays aloft, right? Those particles stay aloft
the
for the longest.
Time.
Right.
Yeah, the higher you go, the residence time is longer.
Exactly.
So
but they want to dim the sun. From our point of view, they want to dim the sun. But from outside the planet's point of view, the planet would look whiter because it's reflecting more sunlight back off of those particles in the.
That's true, right? Because of what's called Rayleigh scattering. That's the reason why the sky is blue. But if you put a whole bunch of other chemicals up into the stratosphere, that's called me scattering. So this would actually look white from the ground as well. It would whiten the sky from the ground if there was stratospheric aerosol injection happening. Well, guess what? Mexico banned geoengineering. And David Keith, we know this name? Everybody knows David Keith?
No, it doesn't ring a bell.
Okay.
But right. Keep this short because we're almost up on an hour.
We're going to wrap it up right here. I remember the names now, and I'll get this in here real quick. Mount Pinatubo erupts 1991. Makes the whole planet cooler. Lowell Wood, Roderick Hyde, and Edward Teller, that's Dr. Evil and the father of the hydrogen bomb at Lawrence Livermore National Labs in 1997, came up with the idea of stratospheric aerosol injection, which was based on an earlier idea called Boutiqueau's blanket by Mikhail Boutiqueau, like in the 1960s. So this popularized the current push for stratospheric aerosol injection. Ken Caldera comes into the scene, models what the geoengineered world will look like, and then Paul Crutzen, a Nobel laureate, says, hey, this could work, and we're off to the races. So now you got universities, you got all these scientists all over the planet talking about how they can block the sun, either with space, mirrors, or stratospheric aerosol injection, marine cloud brightening, all these ideas. Now, here's the rub. David Keith and Ken Caldera were Bill Gates, the guys who handed out Bill Gates money to the budding geoengineers who wanted to study this stuff. David Keith, whenever Mexico banned geoengineering, he said, I don't think you can really ban geoengineering because you can't write legislation that bans putting sulfur into the stratosphere because commercial aviation does that every single day. And that's the truth, because jet fuel has a fuel sulfur content, which is why we've written an EPA petition for rulemaking to basically tell the EPA, hey, if you can do it for the trucking industry, if you can tell diesel fuel creators, you got to go from 500 parts per million sulfur down to 15, then why is the airline industry allowed to use kerosene with up to 3,000 parts per million sulfur? That when I did the calculations, we're talking about 747 million pounds annually of sulfur dioxide that is reaching the stratosphere, which is whitening the sky because it's also filled with the black carbon, with the metals, the aluminum, the barium, and all the other metals are all going into the stratosphere anytime a plane is flying up there.
You say just from commercial aviation or general aviation that's happening right now, that much sulfur is going into, you said. I
am grossly underestimating the number.
Wow. That's huge. I mean, and that reminds me of the old rule of lead in gasoline also. It used to be lead in gasoline, right? There's also still lead in prop plane fuel. It has a ton of lead in it.
They just recently tried to get rid of, they just passed regulations. It's called an endangerment finding that tetraethyl lead and avgas should be removed. So they're phasing that out now. When I testified in front of the EPA in Washington, D.C. in 2015, I razzed them on C-SPAN about, hey, you're ignoring all the people who've been bitching about the lead in the piston planes. You're up here trying to regulate greenhouse gases coming out of a plane. No, we care about planes making clouds blocking the sun, and could you stop doing that and maybe do something about the metals?
Right.
So, what we're doing right now is we've got an EPA petition for rulemaking. You can learn about this at climateviewer.news. That's my Substack. There's an article. There's 2 articles up there right now where you can read our petition. Go to AmericanCleanAirCoalition.org. It's me, Renette Senum, Leslie Manukian, Michael Hogan. SARG, Global Wellness Forum. We've signed this petition. I spent, 20 years learning this stuff, writing it down into this petition to tell the government, look, we're tired of you guys right there.
There it is. Yep.
The fight against geoengineering, and the other one's right up there taking chemtrails to court. We are doing something for the first time that nobody has ever done. A lot of people have been talking for 20 years about chemtrails. The difference is I wrote with the help of some friends, wrote a petition that is 39 pages long with 170 scientific, citations in it. And we submitted it to Lee Zeldin because when Make Sunsets, this geoengineering startup, was throwing balloons in the sky, he went on Twitter, and you saw it, Mike. I saw your responses, and Dane said the same thing. Why is Lee Zeldin complaining about a dude throwing 220 pounds of sulfur into the stratosphere? I mean, I get it. They're
it's a drop in the
geoengineers.
bucket. Yeah.
It's nothing. And ignoring the airline industry putting almost 1 billion pounds of sulfur into the stratosphere. So this is where we're holding their feet to the fire.
If I could just paraphrase and summarize here in the interest of time, what I think you've just said here, which is pretty profound, is that all of the jet fuel emissions have metals, they have sulfur. So all of them are, in essence, chemtrails, but not necessarily deliberately. It's just that they're burning fuel, crisscrossing the skies with this fuel. Sometimes it appears based on barometric pressure or whatever, ice, nucleation, whatever. Sometimes it's invisible, but it's always there, and it's always toxic in some way in the aggregate. Is that?
It's actually worse than what most people think, because most people think if I don't see the lines, it's a no spray day. But the truth of the matter, these chemicals are still getting dumped into the stratosphere. The Indian Space Organization found 10,000 black carbon particles per cubic centimeter at 18 kilometers. That is freaking insane. That's 60,000 feet. 10,000 black carbon particles, the only source of which could have been aviation fuel because it was spherical. It was covered in graphite or graphene. It's the only place it could come from. The northern hemisphere is chemically distinct from the southern hemisphere. 80% of commercial aviation occurs in the northern hemisphere. The stuff that's in my petition is groundbreaking. Nobody's ever, and the fact that people aren't talking about it is even more mind-numbing for me, because I've always said the truth is scarier than fiction. If I were the airline industry and I had avoided being regulated since I was created, I would make up the chemtrail conspiracy just so that people did not focus on my problems.
Interesting. Yeah, interesting.
So what is the petition? I mean, what are you trying to achieve there?
We're asking them to reduce jet fuel sulfur content to 15 parts per million. This will reduce the atmospheric load in the stratosphere. It will stop the stratospheric aerosol injection of sulfur by the aviation industry to the tune of 42 million flights per year. Geoengineer said they only needed 14 planes to geoengineer the whole planet, but we're ignoring 42 million flights per year. By 2050, that's expected to double.
Is there any mechanical reason why the manufacturers of the jet engines say that they need sulfur in the mix for engine reliability or anything like that? Kind of the way lead was in avgas. That was the engine health.
Right. They've made the argument that, well, it's a lubricity improver. We need it to, we don't take the, all of the sulfur out because it helps, with erosion, the whole thing would fall. That whole argument falls apart prima facie when you realize that same hearing that I went to in 2015, the Obama administration canceled that hearing and said, I'm going to sign a deal with China, the ICAO, and the European Union to use sustainable aviation fuel, biofuels, for contrail control. Biofuels, they have many different sources, but one thing they have in common is there's zero sulfur. They have been flying they have been testing biofuels for 15 years now. There have been transatlantic flights that run on 100% sustainable aviation fuel, zero sulfur, no engines got destroyed. So sell that to somebody who, didn't know about any of this. It's absolute BS, and that's why we're asking for this. The second thing that we're asking for is mandatory contrail avoidance. We can tell where the ice supersaturated regions are in the sky. They're not everywhere. It's not that dang hard to avoid them. Detecting them, and with modern AI and all of the things that they're already using, Palantir just got a contract to route all the flights. I don't know if that makes you feel better or worse. It certainly doesn't make me feel any better. But if Palantir and their AI are going to be running all these, Google AI just partnered with American Airlines and did some transatlantic flights where they were able to avoid ice supersaturated regions and reduce contrail formation by 69%. So if they can do it with a little bit of Gemini and some United Airlines on a test, then why aren't they doing this at scale? We are demanding our blue skies back. We've been able to do the military does this. You think that the B-2 bombers that went over and dropped those bunker busters in Iran were leaving big white stripes behind them?
I doubt
Hell
it.
no, they weren't. So we have the technology, we have the ability. This is what we are demanding from the EPA, and in turn, once the EPA says, yes, this is visible pollution. That's all they have to do is make an endangerment file and say, you know what, sulfur in the stratosphere is pollution, and so is the cloud that these planes are making. The FAA will be required by law under the Clean Air Act, which is what we're doing. We're using the Administrative Procedure Act to petition the government using the Clean Air Act to clean up the damn airline industry. And if they don't, then we can sue them. Unlike... Go ahead.
Jim, who should have veto power over an experiment that affects everyone under the sky?
Nobody. God.
Okay. Well,
that's my answer. Let God control the weather, not man. We are not responsible enough to do this.
I hear you. And who owns the sky, Jim? God.
Exactly.
Right.
Unless you live in New York City, and then apparently like 50 feet above your head, people sell that by the acre.
Yeah.
I mean, the stupidity of our, like capitalism is great. We would not be sitting in air conditioning rooms talking to each other on an internet without capitalism. But there is a point where it goes past stupid. And disaster capitalism, weather derivatives, betting on the weather, all of the stuff that's going on. And now we have private companies that are venture capital startups for geoengineering.
Oh, yeah.
We have got to get ahead of this and start talking about the real problems as soon as possible before it's too late. And that's my role, is to just focus on the real and be pragmatic and try to come up with solutions.
Well, my take is that if God made the weather, and I'm pretty sure he did, how big must the technocrats' egotistical balls be to try to edit his work, right? I mean,
that is the whole premise of technocracy, is a scientific dictatorship that controls all resources, whether it's water, earth, or human.
Right.
So the only reason they abandoned climate change, because it was a way to control people, is because now they have AI. And now climate change ain't so bad. Even Bill Gates said, you know what? Climate change is not so bad. We're not going to die, because they found a better way to control people.
True.
It's a technocratic wet dream come true.
We are over time here, but wow, this has been really fascinating. We've all learned a lot. Jim, let me give out your website again. ClimateViewer.com is one of them. And what was the other one about chemtrails?
It's chemtrailfacts.com. And like I said, that's still a work in progress. I've got miles to go on that. But if you go to connect.climateviewer.com, that'll show you 3 of the 4 websites I have, plus my Substack, YouTube, X, and all that stuff.
Here we go.
Join our Telegram chat. And, if I do everything open source AF, So if you appreciate what I'm doing, join my Patreon, sign up for Substack. I would greatly appreciate it. I'm trying to buy you build a studio in my backyard so one day I can look as sexy as Mike does here on the camera and not be in my bedroom, be able to make videos more often and program.
We couldn't tell. I mean, your background looks great. Actually, your lighting's good. It's all good.
I'm doing the best I can with bubble gum and duct tape.
No, you made it look great. You should see some of the stuff that we deal with other guests. It's pretty crazy. But this has been great, Jim. Thank you so much for joining, for your time. I showed your website, all those 3 sites you mentioned. And then Todd and I are going to come back for the after party discussion. We'll take a quick break, folks. And just stay with us. We'll be right back with the after party. Stay with us. Join the official discussion channel for this show on Telegram at t.me/decentralizedtv, where you can ask questions or offer suggestions of who we should interview next. Also be sure to subscribe to the email newsletter on decentralized.tv, where you'll be alerted about 1 day in advance of each new upcoming episode, before it gets published. On decentralized.tv, you'll also find links to our video channels and social media channels across all platforms, including Brighteon, Rumble, BitChute, Twitter, Truth Social, and more. Check it all out at decentralized.tv. All right, welcome back to the after party, folks. Wow, Todd, that guy has a lot of knowledge in his head, and
yeah, he really does.
Clearly he has looked at this for many years with a great mind and a lot of detail.
Yeah. I think when others say move along or the government says move along, Jim says, actually, no, hold my beer. Let's zoom in 400%. And I just love that. He's a fact collector and very, very discerning. I learned a lot. I mean, it makes some sense. And I want to resist. I want to resist with all my heart and soul that this isn't some big conspiracy theory where they are trying to just zigzag us out of existence. I mean, if indeed it is, it's the first time I heard that there are these areas that you could route around to where chemtrails are just going to naturally occur if a regular jet flies through, right?
Well, I mean, clearly these areas, it's based on, barometric pressure or air density, as we call it in ballistics, moisture level, water vapor, all these things. These areas move around, so they have to be, I think, dynamically detected and avoided if there's an effort to avoid them.
Yeah, because I was initially when he was talking about that, I'm like, yeah, no, Jim. I mean, I remember the sky was blue all the time when I was a kid, and they were still flying jets through there. And to this day, some days you go out and it's just beautiful blue, and you still see planes that are flying through. So I had never heard that these centers are like an amoeba and that they just move along, and that one day those same 10 flights can fly through there like clockwork, and you see nothing, and the next day they're creating these chemtrails. I'm open to it, but that breaks my brain.
Well, the takeaway that I got from this interview, and let me back up because my lab tests for heavy metals, and so I've studied a lot about heavy metals over the years, and we know that, for example, around small community airports where they use a lot of avgas, the lead concentrations in the land near the airport are much higher than farther away from the airport. So, I'm trained as a small aircraft pilot. So, you fly a pattern around the runway, you come in to land, with a certain pattern, kind of like a giant rectangle. And so your fuel that you burn, which has lead in it, is going to tend to settle on the approaches and the takeoff exits. The way, right, the compass direction of the runway, like runway 17 is at 170 degrees on the compass. So those lead patterns are going to line up with 170 degrees on the compass. And it turns out that's all true. So what our guest said today that made sense to me is that really he's saying that all jet fuel is toxic.
Yeah.
all of it.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to spray anything because it's being combusted and released.
Right.
Right. And it's got sulfur and it's got other, metals, some of them heavy, whatever, lots of different metals, some toxic, some not. But you can imagine the dispersion of that being very wide.
Yeah, yeah. I can look up in the sky and see the zigzag, and based upon what Jim shared, I can reconcile that pretty easily. But what I also appreciated was his education on cloud seeding, because there are the technocrats out there that are trying to modify the weather. And it sounds like for profit, like,
or as a weapon.
Yeah, as a weapon. Kind of like, Epstein getting video with his special guests, and then using that to blackmail them. It's like, this is just a different kind of blackmail going to these cities or oil companies in the Gulf and whatnot. That's just nuts. But that, he seems to say, is definitely a thing. Cloud seeding and geoengineering. So I'm still interested in geoengineering governance, Mike. I mean, because it's like, what good is it if these people can just run these experiments way above our heads? I mean, it doesn't that just piss you off that they could steer a hurricane, Mike?
Well, yeah. I mean, among other things, they use planet Earth as a giant petri dish for their mad science experiments, right? And we all have to try to survive it, whatever they're doing with freaking, spike proteins or heavy metals or pesticides or the stratosphere or trying to dim the sun,
Yeah. And look, if the sun gets dimmed, do we at least get a utility rebate, Mike?
I tell you, the power grid is starting to fail. The Eastern grid. What happened over the July 4th holiday, Con Ed announced rolling reductions in voltages to hundreds of thousands of customers across New York City. They reduced their voltage from the 115 typical residential voltage for single phase electricity. They reduced it in some cases to 86 volts. So,
wow.
They claimed it was only an 8% reduction, but it was actually a 25% in many areas. So they're turning down the voltage, which means you can't run computers, right?
Wait.
Yeah.
Help me understand that. So you're saying that 25% of the homes and businesses in New York City went through a period over the weekend of not
25% of the homes, hundreds of thousands of homes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And this was announced by Con Ed, by the way.
Okay.
It's all in their press release. They reduced the voltage, they claimed by 8%, but it was actually 25% in many areas. So you're paying for 115 volts.
Yeah.
You're getting 86.
But that degradation is the difference to where you can not only run your air conditioning, you can't run a computer.
You can't run computers on 86 volts. You can run like old motors will run slower. Okay. Incandescent lights will run dimmer. A lot of sort of older electrical consumption devices will run with lower consumption.
Wow.
But not modern electronics. They have to have certain voltage to the power supply in order to function. So they basically turned off all your computers.
That's not going to last very long. I mean, it can't last very long, right? I mean,
but they did it unannounced. They did it.
And what kind of, I mean, I didn't see that news.
Oh, yeah. I did an infographic on it.
You did?
Over the weekend. Yeah, it was a big deal. Rolling blackouts. Actually, where'd that go?
That's nuts.
Yeah, let me bring it up here.
Okay.
Here it is. This infographic. Rolling blackouts are here. This is from Con Ed, and they turned down. Here it is. 86 volts is what some customers ended up with. And then there was also an alert by PJM, the interconnection for the East grid, 67 million customers, were hit by an emergency declaration of PJM saying they're going to have to start turning off data centers. And that's why Trump was telling everybody to turn up your thermostat to stop using as much air conditioning.
Whoa.
Yeah, that's why Trump said that.
That
to try to save the data centers.
That makes all the sense in the world on a weekend that has record highs and people are going to die from, save our data centers, kill grandma.
It was peak demand on the grid, and the grid, the Eastern grid is at its limit.
Good Lord.
And so, I don't know what this has to do with chemtrails, let's say, but at some level it's all interconnected in the fact that they use climate change to try to get people to stop using power. Now they're going to use, blackouts. Just, we're out of power.
Yeah.
Good luck. That's why you're going to have to use these typewriters over here. See, remember my typewriter?
Yeah.
Here it is. Yeah. Uses 0 volts, 0 voltage right here. This sucker doesn't need any electricity.
Wow.
Yeah.
Man,
blackout proof.
You just know that all of these controversial topics are going to eventually become a documentary narrated by Morgan Freeman, I think. We should only hope. He's got a great voice for that. He does.
But so what do you think of the interview that we just did? What's your takeaway?
Well, I learned something in that, and it makes sense, is that every jet that flies over my head is spewing fuel that is poisoning the sky in its own way, right? What I had no idea was that there are certain areas where it would fly through, and that same flight could go through the same area and it be completely blue sky and not appear. That I have to do a little more research on, and I want to understand what these areas are, so that's my homework, Mike. What about you?
Well, the takeaway to me was that all jet fuel is pollution.
Yeah.
Which makes sense. But I was really shocked by what he said was the calculation of how many pounds of sulfur are emitted into the atmosphere because of commercial aviation. And also there's a lot of military aviation right now.
Sure.
Trump's flying, like seemingly burning an unlimited amount of jet fuel to fund this war with Iran.
Good point.
Right. And taking all the fuel when we're in the middle of an energy crisis. And, what are the implications of the military polluting the skies?
Yeah. Man.
Yeah.
I just want to go back to the 50s. Like,
but you weren't there.
I know. 50s. I know. My
50s envy.
My grandpa was thinking about me, I think. I don't know. But it's nuts out there. But I do have to say, I'm going to stand firm on this. Ever since I installed my little cloudbuster back there, I have had blue skies. So I don't know what that does, but it has totally impacted my my operating reality.
Well, maybe based on what we learned today, maybe that device changes the threshold where contrails form.
Ah, good point.
Maybe.
It's a great point.
Yeah.
As it spews out its negative ions. That's about the only thing I know about it, is that it spews out the negative ions. If people are interested in that, Mike and I did an interview with the inventor of this, and I think you should go back about 10, 12 episodes and watch it. It's fascinating. And
we have an update coming on that device, by the way, because we're working on something in secret. Yeah. But anyway, we're going to have an update for you. But maybe that's how that works. Maybe it connects with, ionization in the sky. Yeah. And alters the area, making where that zone, where it doesn't create that zone that is prime for chemtrails, or what we allege to be chemtrails, to form. Yeah. Yeah. That may be it. Could be, right? Yeah. But it doesn't mean that, if the planes are flying over, they are still exhausting jet fuel.
Right. That's right.
Right.
But maybe it's impacting that area that he said that, you could fly around. Maybe it just dissipates that, whatever that, I don't know what the hell it is. Mike. I have to rewind it.
You know what the easiest way in the world is to clear the skies of jet contrails? Is start a war with Iran and have a jet fuel shortage.
There you go.
It's like, airlines are already canceling flights in some countries because of that. We've seen that out of Australia, for example, and other countries.
Yeah.
If the strait doesn't reopen, and I mean fully reopen, which it's not,
no,
then there's going to be a global jet fuel shortage that will become very real.
It will. Yeah.
I don't mean that all the planes can't fly, but airlines are going to have much more difficulty acquiring fuel economically, and they'll be cutting flights left and right.
Oh, yeah. Well, and the flights that you can get are going to be relatively unaffordable.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. Fuel surcharges and things like that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
More people will be driving. And by the way, full self-driving vehicles now, like Tesla, are so advanced that driving is much easier on road trips. And Todd,
good point.
I have a big announcement here.
Okay.
It's funny, since I started talking about EVs, and I don't even have one yet, I probably will, but since I started talking about EVs and the need to be self-reliant, and I'm setting up, a solar charging system here, now 4 of my employees have purchased Tesla Model Ys.
Okay.
So when I pull into my parking lot here now, it's like a Tesla sales lot or something.
Wow.
There's like
Are they happy with them?
They love them. And on top of that, I talk with my team. We are going to set up a Tesla charging station, actually
Perfect.
2 stations here, so that our employees can refuel for free by driving to work.
How great is that?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. It costs us, but it doesn't cost them.
Yeah. That's a nice company perk.
That's a nice perk, right? And it makes
perk.
you a little happier to go to work. Yeah. Right.
Absolutely.
Like, I better not call in sick today. I need to recharge my vehicle.
Yeah.
Right?
That's perfect.
Yeah.
That's perfect.
Yeah. And plus we have commercial rates for the power here, so it's cheaper.
Great.
So it's like, why not? Why not let the employees charge their cars?
That's great. Good for you, Mike.
Yeah.
That's great.
That's great. And it's all my fault because I started talking about EVs. So that's why this has happened.
It's okay. Keep talking, Mike. Keep driving down everybody's expenses.
Tesla should pay me a commission.
Yes,
or something. I should be an affiliate of Tesla. Like they should give us credit because I'm selling, accidentally selling so many of their vehicles to my own employees.
That's great.
It's so funny. But anyway, there are a number of cool things that we've all learned about over the last few years that can help us accomplish things like, EVs. Now you can charge from sunlight. You can have your own fuel from the sky.
Yep.
So you get to keep the energy you harvest.
Yep.
And then you have, what's the sponsor of the show? Your website, My575E, bring it up, allows you to keep more of what you earn.
Amen.
So it's kind of like sunlight from the sky.
It is. When you keep more of what you earn, protect what you have, and decrease your personal liability, those are 3 legs to the UNA stool. And I have to tell you, Mike, we've had a real breakthrough over the last couple of weeks. And that, it's just, I've helped over 700 people acquire these. And what became very evident to me, especially of late, is there are certain people who have a little more complicated business structure needs or sophisticated business structure needs. And we've actually put together a team to be able to assist those who might want to have a more macro strategy, like if they have LLCs, C Corps, S Corps, how these UNAs can really, what do they call it? Keep you-know-who from piercing the veil. And I have learned so much over the last couple of weeks, being the participant on lots and lots of way more in-depth Zoom calls to where we're unpacking this macro strategy. And man,
wow.
oh man,
I would love to learn more about that.
Yeah. No doubt. We should do that. I can sponsor a Zoom call with these couple of people that are expert in this. One person is a fractional CEO who, just it's kind of a funny story. This gentleman got his own UNA 18 months ago, and what I noticed was in our private Telegram group, all of a sudden people who had LLCs or different business structures, this gentleman named Jason, he would just come in and he would help them and assist them and everything. And then finally, about 2 months ago, I reached out to him and I'm like, Justin, can we chat? Who are you? and I realized that he is a fractional CEO for 6 major companies worldwide. And it has just been put on his heart. You know how I talk about this is my form of activism? Same with him, except he knows how business entities work, and he has figured out the UNA, the power of the UNA that turbocharges everything from behind, from in the private. How you can have your LLC or your business be forward, public facing, but get all of the protections that the UNA offers. So I just want to throw out into the universe, if you are a person who has, and the other thing is, if you're a landlord, man, if you have multiple properties, then there is an amazing strategy to be able to make sure that it's mind-boggling how
wow.
you can. So, yeah.
Okay, so let me give you a website here. my575e.com is where people can click Let's Go. They can sign up. They can learn about this. They can pay a small fee and actually do a consultation with you. Correct?
Yep, that's right. And they get it back if they move forward with a UNA, and most people do. You just deduct that from the investment of the UNA. So it makes all kinds of sense to just simply book a consultation with me. Okay,
that's cool. And then for you said the fractional CEO team, is that like 5/16 or like what kind of fractions are at work there?
Well, he's 6/10 right now.
6/10?
Well, he works with 6 different companies. No, it's just that he's in demand, and I understand why after talking with him, and then what we've developed over the last couple of months. Because I just flipped the script, and I'm just like, Jason, you're helping a lot of people in the group. Can we organize that a little more?
So that makes total sense.
Yeah. So if I'm having a consultation with somebody and I'm discerning that, hey, maybe you should take it to the next level to be able to, just have another consultation, and it's not any additional fees to be able to pull him in and another person. So I'm just throwing it out there. We are always trying to improve, and the more and more that I am knee deep in this, man, oh man, this entity is so powerful.
Yeah.
It's just so powerful.
Okay, well, folks, I encourage you to check this out, especially if you own gold and silver, if you own crypto, if you own real estate, if you own a business, especially a business
if you're a W-2 earner, a 1099 earner, if you operate an LLC, own property, trade in crypto, stack gold and silver, if you have children, if you're interested in a generational way to be able to transfer assets, book a consultation with me. We can chat about it.
If you breathe oxygen, if you have a heartbeat, I mean, it's like almost everyone fits.
Almost everyone.
Yeah.
If you can fog a mirror, you might want to book a consultation.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so that's great to hear. And I look forward. I'd love to sit in on a Zoom chat. I want to learn more about it too. Also, then from my side, I want to mention rangerdeals.com. And this company right here, Limitless Peptides, they have a 15% off sale happening right now for a few more days. And you can use our discount code Ranger for another 15%.
Whoa.
So you can save 30% because they stack the discounts on BPC 157 and CMAX and some of the other favorites that I've used, very successfully over a year and a half now, especially with the BPC for healing old injuries and things like that. And here at rangerdeals.com, we have discounts on the affiliate deals from Battalion Metals a very, very tiny discount. They waive the shipping insurance fee because they can't discount gold and silver. There's already, very narrow margins. But there's savings on Ness's certified organic CBDA hemp extract, plus the Red Life devices, the PetMectin, VP.net, satellite phones here, and so much more.
So I was just going to share that I have started the protocol of using the Ness's CBD oil. Yeah. Every morning a syringe, every evening a syringe. Had to get used to the taste a little bit, but
when you say syringe, you mean like a dropper?
Yeah, the dropper. Sorry.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah,
it's like, where are you injecting it?
No, sorry, the dropper.
Oh, okay.
I can tell you that I'm sleeping better.
Oh, yeah. It's known for that.
Yeah. So, and the BP 157, what is your protocol on how to properly take that?
BPC 157, I use it intranasally.
Okay.
So I just do like one squirt in the nasal passages in the morning, just once a day.
Oh, just once a day in the morning. Yeah. And that gets the job done.
That's all I have ever done with that. Except when my sinuses are stopped up, I haven't been using it.
Right.
Because there's too much other stuff in the way.
Yeah.
But normally it's just like one spray in the morning.
Okay. Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah. Same thing with CMAX.
Great discount.
Yeah. These are some really good discounts and very, very rare to have discounts like that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, anyway, Todd, I want to thank you for your time today, and also want to thank our audience and let them know that all the other episodes are available at decentralize.tv. And you don't want to miss the episodes because they're all fascinating, not just today's.
No, and they are timeless. They're as relevant today as they were 3 years ago when we interviewed Jim Gale about food.
And I'm still stunned by Randall Carlson showing us the meteor impact on the sun and how it blew this mass coronal ejection out the opposite side of the sun.
Wasn't that crazy?
That still haunts me because I'm like, okay, so wait a minute. Earth doesn't have to be hit by a meteor. The sun can be hit by a meteor, and it can blast this coronal ejection into Earth's path.
Yep.
So that's what Randall was saying, like solar events can melt ice caps on Earth. Talk about a great flood. The great flood,
Yep. Yeah, that was such a great interview.
Like all God had to do was throw a rock at the sun. And then there's a great flood on Earth. You know what I'm saying?
I don't think I missed that part in Genesis.
No, I'm pretty sure it's in Genesis chapter 6. Yeah.
He sent a spitwad to the sun. And
God clobbered the sun with a giant space rock. And then there was a flood.
Jesus pitching practice. Come here.
Yeah. But isn't it wild? Like I was always just thinking about impacts on Earth, and I wasn't thinking about impacts because I thought the sun is so huge that it would just eat whatever you throw at it.
I would think.
That's what I thought.
He showed differently, didn't he?
Well, apparently it makes you wonder too, like the sun must be less sort of liquidy. Like it's more solid to allow all that kinetic energy to travel through to the other side and blow out the other side. It's like shooting a watermelon with a 30-06, and then the back end of the watermelon blows out. That's what happens to the sun.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, Mike. I think you need a paired comparison on the ranch. You need to get a 30-06 and a slow motion camera and blow up a watermelon.
That's all right. No, I think everybody already did that researching the Charlie Kirk situation. So
good point.
I'm not going to do that. But in any case, sorry to distract you with that. But I'm just shocked. Like we have so many amazing guests, and even the things we learn on this show, they stick with me.
Yeah. And people haven't seen anything yet. Our guest lineup.
Yeah, we have some pretty cool guests coming up.
Amazing guests.
Yeah, that's for sure. Okay. All right. Well, until then, Todd, have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Mike. Get that voice 100%. It's sounding, you sound like you're 98%.
It's close. Yeah, it's close.
All right, Mike. Have a great one.
All right, you too. And thank all of you for watching. Again, check out all the episodes at decentralize.tv. Thanks for watching today. Take care.
Cheers.
Stock up on the long-term storable Ranger Bucket Set. 536 servings of clean organic superfoods for your survival pantry. Certified organic and lab tested for purity. Order now at healthrangerstore.com.